So welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First, let's talk about this very disturbing case facing pop star Lizzo, how she has now been sued for fat shaming, sexual harassment, and creating a hostile work environment. What does this mean for the culture and for the culture of rape, culture of abuse? We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, let's talk about reparations, DEI, and so much more. We're going to be checking in with political strategist and media planner Naomi Perez to give us some insight on what the Latino community thinks of these issues that are often talked about in the light of the Black community. So we'll have that conversation later. The big culture conversation, Governor Ron DeSantis has officially invited Vice President Kamala Harris to have a meeting to discuss the Black history standards. My question is, should she go? So we have that conversation later on and so much more. Stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Let's jump right in. We got so much to talk about. And if you're just streaming with us, if you're wondering, where are we streaming? How can folks get in touch with us and take a look at some of the discussions we're having? Make sure you check out these platforms. We are streaming right now, of course, on blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. Also, we are streaming on Amazon News. And for those of you who have Roku TVs, we're streaming there live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on Amazon Fire TV. So make sure you check us out there. We're also streaming on social media platform, Facebook and YouTube. If you look under Roland Martin's page on YouTube, and it's also on YouTube where you can join the chat and be a part of today's culture crew as we have these discussions and get your take. This is one of the very, very few platforms, whether you're talking about digital space or otherwise, where you are a part of the conversation. And I would love to hear what you have to say as we have these very, very important conversations. So make sure y'all jump in the chat on Roland Martin's YouTube page, and let's have a discussion. All right, first and foremost, folks, let's talk about Lizzo, a very disturbing case that has come up, a lawsuit that has been filed against the pop singer for a number of allegations attached to it. She has been sued for fat shaming, sexual harassment, and overall creating an overall hostile work environment. Take a look at this latest report, exclusive report from NBC News, folks. Take a look. This is, when you get into the details of this situation, it is not pretty. So this is what NBC reported on this, that 3 of Lizzo's former dancers have accused the singer of sexual harassment and creating a hostile work environment in a lawsuit filed today. They also allege that she pressured one of them to touch a nude performer at an Amsterdam club and subjected the group to an excruciating audition after leveling false accusations that they were drinking on the job. Now, the suit filed in Los Angeles Superior Court and provided to NBC News by the plaintiff's law firm also accuses the captain of Lizzo's dance team of proselytizing to other performers and deriding those who had premarital sex while sharing lewd sexual fantasies, simulating oral sex, and publicly discussing the virginity of one of the plaintiffs. The suit does not say if Lizzo knew about the allegations linked to the dance captain, Charlene Quigley, but the plaintiffs believe the singer was aware of their complaints about her, according to their lawyer, Ron Zabrano. Man, oh man. Now, folks, this is a developing story that we're keeping our eyes on, but one thing is for certain, that the culture of violence, the culture of abuse is a culture that is seen too often in this country, especially by those who have power, influence, and money. But more so, what's even more disturbing about this story for me is the fact that it is women involved in the abuse of other women, folks. And there was a part of this lawsuit And like I said, we were going to keep our eyes on it. But there was a part of this lawsuit that was so disturbing and it's so graphic in detail, where one of the dancers said that they were at this Amsterdam club and she was coerced and forced to touch this new performer. But the way that it was done, how it was done, that she was, criticized and ostracized and made fun of because she refused to do it. And it took her 4 tries, and I'm saying 4 tries in which she refused at least 3 of the times. And Lizzo, according to the documents, and this is the allegation that one of the dancers has said, that Lizzo pressured her to perform very, very graphic sexual acts in public, folks, in public while at this club. And so we will, this is disturbing. That's the best word I can use to describe this situation. But I think it speaks volumes about where we are in this culture, in our society, that now the culture of abuse, the culture of sexual, women would even go as far as to call it the rape culture, is not just relegated to men. It is something that women, unfortunately, time and time again, we're seeing more and more stories like this, where women are the perpetrators on other women. I want to get your take on this, folks. If you've heard about this story this morning, or if you via social media, because there are so much discussion about this. I want you to join us as part of our culture crew today on our YouTube page. Just take a look at Roland Martin on YouTube. And I would love to get your take on this, crew, about this situation, because like I say, it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes about where we are. And Lizzo is a performer who has been celebrated in many spaces and circles as being one who promotes body positivity. She's also a performer that is, she holds, she has no filter in terms of showing her sexuality. But it may come to be a real problem for the pop star, as we're looking at some of the disturbing details of this lawsuit here in Los Angeles. And it opens up the conversation about abuse of women, about abuse of coming from people of power and influence. And so, as I'm looking at this story, I hope that you keep your eyes on it. And of course, you can stay tuned to the culture here on the Black Star Network as we look at this situation. But it is not good at all for Lizzo to have these former dancers coming out with this major lawsuit with a lot of serious allegations against her and her dance captain, Charlene Quigley. A lot of conversation about it. More importantly, a lot of big questions as to what has been happening in the camp of Lizzo, who is continuing to show that's having this discussion. Let me go to you and hear what you got to say on this, crew. And I appreciate all of you for checking in. I see Francesca Epps. I see Pretty Brown Mimi. Good to see you, Mimi and Francesca. Cindy D. McCole. It's good to see you. Pauline Hurt. Pauline, my sister, how are you? You are not a victim. Yes, checking in. Tiana, I see you. Robin Welch, my sister, thank you so much for checking in. Let me just share with so many folk what y'all are saying right now. And we want to welcome our new Bring the Funk fan club member, Janice Leggett. Janice, welcome to the club. And thank you so much for tuning in to the culture here on the Black Star Network. We look forward to hearing from you as well, Janice. Let me hear what you got to say, crew. Let me see here. You are not a victim. You checked in. It says SMA shaking my head. Wow. Yeah. That's how I felt when I started to read this story. You're not a victim. Wow. It is very, very disturbing details. Robin, my sister, Robin Welch, you checked in. So sad with the crying emoji. Yeah, it is a very sad situation. Again, folks, there needs to be a bigger conversation. We're not going to jump too far into it at this moment because we want to see how this story develops. But there needs to be a bigger conversation about abuse, the culture of abuse in this country, sexual harassment, and how these things don't just have to come from men. They are now coming from women. We see these stories. I'm thinking about the Jeffrey Epstein story, the man that killed himself in prison, the billionaire financier who had multiple allegations of child molestation, child pornography, having sex with younger girls. But he had a woman in who was a part of that whole process. And so we're seeing this more and more. And so, it is truly a sad day for to see this type of thing, especially coming from a major Black performer like Lizzo, this is happening. Tiana, I see you checked in with the big eyes emojis in disbelief. Yeah, it is absolutely horrifying to know that this is happening, and this has been happening according to the lawsuit for some time. So we will certainly keep our eyes on this situation, but I think that it's going to lend us to have a much bigger conversation to talk about the culture of rape, the culture of sexual harassment and abuse. We got to talk about that, and it's not just from men. What happens when those things are perpetrated by other women, on younger women? What happens then? What's the conversation? How do we handle that within the culture? So we're going to explore this case more as more details about the situation becomes public. Cindy, you checked in and said it's ironic that she would be accused of fat shaming, right? As you look at her, the image she wants to project, the pressure to be something different and project something different must be great for her. Yeah. But she put herself out there, right, Cindy? You know what I mean? She wanted to be seen as this woman who kind of quote unquote serves as the voice of those who are overweight, the voice of those women who suffer from fat shaming. And look what happened. Look what happened. Nicole, you checked in and said, hopefully this is not true about Lizzo, being that she is a plus size woman who promotes acceptance and has spoke out against bullying. Right. You're absolutely right, Nicole. I hope that's not the case. But when you read this story, and the folks, just go online and everywhere, when you read the story and the details, it's just like, whew, these are some very, very serious allegations. Fat shaming, hostile work and creating a hostile working environment, sexual harassment, having dancers perform doing lewd and sexually graphic acts, whether it's on other people, whether it's being discussed within that space, the workspace. Very, very disturbing. And you are not a victim. You said it, somehow the patriarchy is to blame, I'm sure, with the rolling eyes emoji. But hey, the patriarchy is real, that this type of thing kind of gets passed on, where even women who are often the subject of this level of abuse and harassment and often the subject of these things now become the ones who are doing these things. It is very, very disturbing, to say the least. So again, folks, we're going to keep our eyes on this story, and let's have a bigger conversation as more details develop out of this lawsuit. Look, we got to take a first pause. When we come forward, let's switch gears. We're going to be checking in with one sister to talk about reparations, diversity, equity, inclusion, and so much more. She serves as a political strategist. She's also a media consultant and public relations specialist, and she's going to give us some information, as she's also a representative of a member of the Latino community, Afro-Latino community. So let's have a conversation about these things. Stay with us, folks. We're just getting started here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
You're rocking with the best. All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Yep, you're rocking with the best here on The Culture on Black Star. So big shout out to my man King, keeping us always sounding and looking good. All right, folks, let's talk a little bit about something that many of us have been discussing, which is the issue of diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as reparations. And we want to have a conversation with a voice that you don't normally hear from, folks. And that's one of the big things about the show, is that we're paying attention to those community issues and that is oftentimes being overlooked and oftentimes require us to sit down and to reflect on what's being said and what's being done. And so this is one of those conversations today, and I'm very, very excited to have this discussion with my sister, who serves as a political strategist. She is a public relations specialist, but she's also one of the national conveners for the Latino Heritage Sites Action Network. And as she's doing some great work in that space of building the bridge between Black and Latino communities in media and of course in politics. She has been a part of the Obama administration. So we are so happy to have her voice to be a part of these conversations about reparations and diversity and so much more. So I want to welcome now to The Culture here on the Black Stars Network, my sister Noemi Perez. Noemi, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. How are you feeling?
Farajii, thank you for having me. And as always, thank you for being an environmental justice champion. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. First, and speaking of environmental justice, I had the great opportunity and the honor to join the panel last night in South Los Angeles, where we talked about urban gardening, something that, you felt like, hey, Farajii, I think you would be good to share some insight. And I was just, even though I was on the panel, I was just like a student to learn from our big brother, Jemiah Hargens, who we're going to have on the show. We're definitely going to bring him on the show to talk about the importance and value of urban gardening. And as you said, talking about how we can use that as a way, a revolutionary act against environmental injustice. So I'm very, very grateful. I just wanted to say thank you for the invite, because it was a phenomenal discussion last night. But I thank you for doing the work that you're doing. You're working in a lot of different spaces, Ms. Noemi. You're bridging the gap between the Latino and Black community. You're working in these spaces of media and politics. You worked for the Obama administration. So let's talk a little bit about all of these experiences that you've had as we look at the bigger picture, one of them being reparations. We know that the state of California has the task force. Here on this show, we have been following the efforts by the California Reparations Task Force as we talk about this big issue. And is it interesting to you that even though California is not considered to be a slave state? California has always been seen as a bastion of freedom and hope for Black and brown communities. So why California? How is it that California is able to set the agenda or dictate how to move forward on such a major issue?
You know, it is interesting, right, that California is leading the charge and in effect creating the blueprint for other states and potentially the federal government to follow. The truth is that California, it has its issues, but it is a far more progressive state than other states, say Florida and Texas. In 2020, then State Assemblywoman Shirley Weber, who is now the state secretary, passed a legislative bill that in effect created the Commission on Reparations and started out the work on California looking into what would potentially be reparations. Interestingly enough, no, California was not a quote unquote slave state, right? But there were approximately 1,600 Americans that were enslaved, i.e. African Americans, descendants of African slaves that came into California with their slave owners. So in effect, there were 1,600 approximately slaves in the state of California. So what does it look like to have the state of California potentially look for the descendants of those 1,600 members, or in effect open it to African Americans overall that reside or have resided over a period of time in the state of California for reparations? The task force issued a 500-page report that it submitted late June 29th here in the state of California. And the state legislature is expected to vote on action by September. Eventually, we don't know what that money would look like, but we do think that it will likely pass in the state of California. We're looking at something that there's a variety of ways that it might come to be. Either it would be a lump sum payout or a payment over the course of time. The key issue here, right, is that it's a blueprint, and it's not just a blueprint for African Americans in other states nationwide, but as you mentioned before, there are other people and groups and communities that might benefit from that blueprint. For example, Asians, tribes, right? So in the state of California, we also have a history of indigenous issues. There were approximately 90,000 tribal members over the course of California history that have been impacted by slavery under the Spanish colonial era, as well as just the horrors that tribes experience in land grabs as white Americans moved west and began to settle in California. So there's that issue. The issue of Californios, which often is not, discussed or known about outside of California. And those are the descendants of people that come from Spanish/indigenous roots that were landowners in the state of California and lost their lands as part of that same westward bound effort by white Americans as they came to California. So in terms of reparations, let's call it what it is, right? At its core, it's about restorative justice. It's about addressing shadow system slavery in the United States, but also all of the implications that came out of that, right? Jim Crow, lynching, police oppression, redlining, you name it, it's there. It's an opportunity for other groups to also follow that blueprint and redress some of the concerns and impacts that have happened to them. And, you know, and I almost failed to mention this, but Asian Americans also have their history in the state of California, not just with the Japanese internment camps of World War II, but other efforts and concerns that have affected them over the course of California's history. Not to mention Chinese Americans. Chinese were part of building the railroad tracks, right? So what does it mean to see African Americans advance in heritage preservation for other groups, right? And what does it mean when we don't support that?
Going on. I see, and I think that's why it's important for us to have this conversation from a lot of different angles. Just because, you know, reparations has often been kind of seen as a Black issue, but you're talking about when you're, the way I'm hearing from you, Sister Naomi, is it's a humanity issue. It affects many different groups of people, from Black people, African Americans, Africans, Native Americans, Latino Americans, Asian Americans. So what we're seeing now is, and I love how you said this, a blueprint that can be modeled not just among the Black community, but it could be a blueprint that can help within other communities. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, I want to continue the conversation as we look at this and look at the larger picture of diversity, of how do we move forward in a more diverse space, especially since you worked in the Obama administration, which is often lauded as an administration that served as a model for what government could look like when all different people come together. So we want to continue the conversation on the other side. Folks, I invite you to join us in the discussion as we checked in with Sister Noemi Perez, political strategist, national convener for the Latino National Heritage Sites. And I want to get your take on this as we have the conversation about reparations, DEI, and so much more. Join us on our YouTube page under Roland Martin. We love to hear what you got to say. And of course, stay tuned. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
For decades, the tobacco industry has deliberately targeted Black communities and kids with marketing for menthol cigarettes. It's had a devastating impact on Black health. Tobacco use claims 45,000 Black lives every year. It's the #1 cause of preventable death. In the 1950s, less than 10% of Black smokers used menthol cigarettes. Today, it's 85%. Menthol cools and numbs the throat, making it easier for kids to start smoking. Menthol also increases addiction, making it harder for smokers to quit. Menthol cigarettes are a big reason why Black Americans have a harder time quitting smoking and die at higher rates from smoking-related diseases like cancer, heart disease, and stroke. It's time to stop Big Tobacco from profiting off Black lives. An FDA ban on menthol cigarettes will improve Black health, save lives, and protect future generations from addiction. Learn more at tobaccofreekids.org/ban menthol.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. We are checking in with my sister who serves as a political strategist, my sister who's doing some fantastic work within the Latino and Black community. She serves as the national convener for the Latino Heritage Sites Action Network. I was talking about my sister Noemi Perez, who's joining us to talk about the issue of reparation and the bigger issue of diversity and so much more. Sister Noemi, when we talked about, and I want to bring you back into the frame on this, you brought up an excellent point talking about how reparations, the conversation that the California Task Force is having about reparations for Black folks, how it serves as a model for discussions, a model for the rest of the country as the state of California is leading the way. But then it's also serving as a model for us to have some very different conversations about what justice, as you say, restorative justice, and I would agree with you wholeheartedly, what restorative justice to a people who have been oppressed, marginalized, and disenfranchised, what that looks like, what that model could potentially be. What does justice look like? Here's my question, though, is Noemi. When we talk about justice and reparations, how come we just don't hear enough from other communities who speak out in support of this? You know what I mean? I think I came across one of the articles or something that says that there was some, a small group of Latinos who are saying, you know what, Black people should get reparations. I came across the same article that also talking about a little bit of some members of the Asian community say Black people should get reparations, but we don't hear a choir of support coming from this community. Why is that?
Very good question. And when I saw that poll data, I was actually shocked myself, right?
Now you're talking about the poll coming from Pew and the Washington Post polls, right?
Yes, right.
Let me share that with the folks, with our watchers, right? Because this is fascinating stuff here, folks. According to some recent polls, Pew Research Center and the Washington Post, they did a poll. They found that 36% of Latinos supported reparations. Approximately 24% of Asian Americans support reparations, and 15% of white Americans support reparations. So those are, it's okay, but it's still a ways to go. It's not a vast majority of people. So is this, what is the disconnect here? Are we finding that Latinos, Asian Americans, and white Americans don't think that this is a good form of restorative justice and refuse to kind of like speak up about this? Like, what are we seeing here from this data?
So very good, excellent question, right? We're talking about 36% of Latinos, which is the highest in terms of approval rating by the poll, but yet very low. It's under 50% of approval rating. Asians, surprisingly, in the 20s, and white Americans, 16%. Low overall. Bottom line, what that means is that there is some education and outreach to be done, in my professional opinion, right? This is an opportunity to bridge build and to, again, help Latinos, Asian Americans, tribes, etc., help them understand the blueprint and how it can be applicable to their respective communities. I think that the low numbers, going back to your question, Farajii, is actually due to maybe the optic or perspective that this is a Black-only issue, and therefore does not relate or isn't relevant to our respective communities, right? They see it as those people are getting money. What about me? What about my community, right? There hasn't been enough education, again, on that blueprint to make it relative, to help communities understand, to help them understand the point of the 250-year chattel slavery system, right? And the 450-year overall experience of what being Black in America is about. Restorative justice is not new in the United States, right? When we talk about reparations, we're talking about the first time it was ever done was the Emancipation Compensation Act in 1862, I believe. And this was the United States, President Lincoln signing a bill giving $300 per slave to the former slave owners who lost slaves after the Emancipation Proclamation. So that was the first time. The second time was in response to the World War II Japanese Internment Act. And that was $20,000 per individual that was affected in internment camps. So this is not new in the U.S. It is not new even in modern times. Okay, the reparations to Japanese Americans was done in the 80s under President Reagan. It's lack of bridging, lack of awareness, lack of having other people, right? Having the bridging conversations between you and myself, Farajii, and raising that conversation and opinion and saying, hey, join us. Let's join together. What is it that can be done to support your respective efforts with reparations for African Americans and descendants of slavery, right? And how that can be applied to my respective community. I'll recently share that this past June, 11 tribes, federal tribes in the United States actually joined together to call for a land back effort, very similar to the reparations blueprint, right? Where it's calling out and addressing the federal needs to address lands that were taken away by the United States and are currently held in trust, if you will, by trust. Many people believe that all of the federal tribes have their own reservations and benefit economically. That's far from true. In fact, there are over 400 federal tribes. Few of them, a small percentage of them, have that economic advantage that we often see or recognize or assume tribes to have. The others are relatively poor. So again, that blueprint, how can we apply it to our respective communities? You know, the other piece is this. I think that, you know, when we talk about reparations, the original bill was actually submitted into Congress for consideration almost 40 years ago. And every year that bill has been reintroduced. Every year for the past like 34 years. Okay.
That's right.
And so it's only within the last 2 years that this issue and this legislation has gained traction with Congress members. It is really within these last 2 years that the issue has gained traction in states. Okay. The other piece of the puzzle, which is something that I would like your audience to pay attention to, and thank you again, Farajii, for your commitment to this issue, is what that means as we see these pieces of legislation move forward, and we see the emergence of new legislation that counters DEI in states, right? It's almost as when something progresses where we're looking at restorative justice, that there are new issues on the conservative side that seek to knock out everything diversity related, everything that relates to Blackness, right? And so again, on one hand, we're looking at the core issue of just restorative justice. And on the other hand is this issue, this long-standing issue that exists in the US of anti-Blackness. We have to address both of them.
Absolutely. My sister, Pretty Brown Mimi 726, she's made the point, and I wholeheartedly agree with her on this, Sister Noemi. She said, I'm reading all the comments in the chat. She said, I think most of us agree we're pro-reparations. I have a lot of pro-reparations folks that tune into the show. She said, I definitely am. I'm pro-reparations, you know what I mean? But I am also pro-justice, right, for all people, because we all have been scarred by the stench, or we all have been soiled by the stench of white supremacy. And so it's a conversation I think that we need to have. And we got a couple of moments left, and Sister Noemi, here in the state of California, I mean, they've been doing this. The task force has been studying this. They've been having a number of conversations, community conversations. But the governor here, Governor Gavin Newsom, made the point that reparations isn't about money. And that essentially that if the state is looking to look for a major payout to Black residents of the state, that it may not happen that way. What's your take on that?
You know, reparations can be in the form of college opportunities, business economic opportunities. The point is that the reparations is targeted specifically to descendants of African slaves, right? African Americans. So it might look differently than the legislation that Congresswoman Cori Bush submitted for $14 trillion, right? Again, we don't know what that California layout, that final address will look like, but we know that it's a blueprint of what is to come. And I will also share this, Brother Farajii, that it looks like the city of Los Angeles is looking to study, analyze, and do something within the city looking at activity from the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, Holly Mitchell, to see what is happening. I don't, though, doubt that there will be money involved. I'm certain that there will be money involved. Whether it will be directed to individuals and their respective bank accounts, to be seen. Another area of concern that I must flag, and this is of concern, right? The questions, are asked, and I'm sure some of your audience listeners are asking, so how do you determine who is to get the money? Extensive, right? Does the state of California give every African-American money that is currently residing in the state? What about past residents, right? What about children who are in the foster care system, or individuals who are in jail who could, otherwise not participate in these types of things? So there are numerous layers, right, that have to be addressed, both in who can benefit from the program, but also how the state would dole it out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Conscious thought, my guy, you checked in and said, whenever it comes to Black people receiving even a modicum of redress for past and present wrongs heaped upon us in this nation, it seems as if everyone else has a problem with it. We got about 30 seconds. Is it our responsibility as Black and even Latino and brown communities to deal with that? Like, I always tell folks, and I've been having this conversation since we started the show, I say, look, that's not our problem. You know what I mean? I want us to stay steadfast on this, right? Like I would love for the 15% of white people who says that Black people deserve reparations, y'all should stand. Because why? That community has been the source of the issue, right? I would like for Asian Americans, Latino Americans. I mean, look, Black people, the blood, sweat, and tears of Black people has helped every single person or groups of people in this country. It has helped this. It is the very fundamental root of this country's success and the greatness and the prosperity of this country. And this is not racism, Sister Noemi. Of course, you know it. This is not racism. Black folks, Latino folks, I mean, Black and brown communities we've given it all. We've given it all. And it's not our place for us to not only call for reparations to happen, we need to walk through the steps, and then we need to defend ourselves. Come on, man, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Sister, man, you got 30 seconds for that. I know it's a little bit of a rant, but it's crazy to expect us to not only call for this to happen, but then we got to defend our actions when other people have benefited from our pain, our oppression. They have benefited from our blood, sweat, and tears in this.
To answer your question, it will require some of us, like myself, to stand in the gap and bridge that gap. So thank you, Brother Farajii, for giving me the opportunity to stand in the gap and for allowing someone like me to come in and say, hey, there are communities here who are willing to help.
Absolutely. Sister Naomi, we're going to bring you back. We're going to have more conversations. I know that there was a new report that came out saying that from the LA City Comptroller, who said that that Black and brown members of the community are disproportionately arrested at higher rates in the city of Los Angeles more than any other group. Black folks make up about 8 to 9% of the city's population. The Latino community makes up about 27 to close to 30% of the city's population. But our arrest rate is well over 75% of the arrests in the city of Los Angeles. So I would love to bring you back to have that conversation. So I appreciate you for offering your voice and serving as an expert on these issues, and continue to do the great work as you serve as the national convener for the Latino Heritage Sites Action Network. We need to bridge the gap, and I appreciate you for being here with us.
Thank you, Brother Farajii. Until next time.
Absolutely. Until next time, sis. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's have a conversation. Yes, let's talk about what is going on. Let me pull this thing up here. I got my rundown here in front of me, folks. Yep, let's talk about the big culture conversation. Governor Ron DeSantis has invited Vice President Kamala Harris to talk about Black history. The question is, should the Vice President entertain the invitation? And she had those strong words to say about what was going on down in Florida. We're going to have that big culture convo up next. And then later on, we're going to be checking in for our sister, Brittany Selah Lee Bay, who is the founder of etymology.org, an organization that's working to use etymology as a source to empower students to have better literacy. So we're going to talk about that as well. We got a lot to talk about. Stay with us. The culture continues on the other side here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being part of the conversation. Dope first hour. If you missed the first hour of the show, you can definitely check it out, be a part of Team Replay. Take a look at all of our past shows on blackstarnetwork.com. And you will be up to date on some of the big conversations that we had. But we definitely got into it as we talked about reparations and diversity, equity, inclusion. And of course, our first story is talking about the disturbing lawsuit against pop singer and performer Lizzo. So there's a lot to cover in that first hour, so make sure you check us out. All right, folks, for our big culture conversation, this is the discussion that we have been keeping our eyes on, and a story that has been developing. Well, it got into a different space. And as you know, down in the state of Florida, there has been a lot of conversation about this Black history standards and the curriculum that's going to be used in the state of Florida, especially around the conversation about what happened with Black folks who were enslaved during the transatlantic slave trade, and more importantly, how Florida continues to make an effort to rewrite history. They made some remarks last week coming from the Florida Department of Education, stating that there was some personal benefit that those who were enslaved, our people, gained as a result of being a part of one of history's most inhumane systems ever recorded. But slaves, and they gained some personal benefit. Well, of course, with that being stated, there was a whole uproar about that situation, so much so that it affected the White House, where Vice President Kamala Harris decided to make a last-minute trip last week to the state of Florida to deliver an address where she blasted Governor Ron DeSantis and the Florida Department of Education for for trying to tell the story of slavery in such biased ways. And as a result of that, it has created another set of fires for not just for the vice president, but also for the state. Well, the state is responding. Governor Ron DeSantis, who is one, not to mince words, has officially invited, on yesterday, he invited Vice President Kamala Harris to Florida to discuss this whole Black history curriculum after Vice President Harris delivered those remarks last week. Here's what the governor of Florida had to say. This is from Ron DeSantis. Take a look at this, folks. He said, in Florida, we are unafraid to have an open and honest dialogue about the issues, and you clearly have no trouble ducking down to Florida on short notice. This is what he told NBC News, referring to Vice President Harris's last-minute trip. He says, so given your grave concern, which I much assume is sincere about what you think our standards are, what our standards say, I am officially inviting you back down to Florida to discuss our African-American history standards. We will be happy to host you in Tallahassee. Okay. She responded to DeSantis today and rejected the invitation, saying, quote, and I will tell you there is no roundtable, no lecture, no invitation we will accept to debate an undeniable fact. There was no redeeming qualities of slavery. Now, she flew to Orlando today to deliver remarks at the 20th Women's Missionary Society of the African Methodist Episcopal Church Quadrennial Convention. So she has declined the invitation to meet with the governor to discuss the Black history curriculum. My question is, should she go? Should she go? Should they have a conversation? Crew, I want you to jump in and share your thoughts on this, because I think that it is necessary, even when we may not want to sit down with those who we disagree with. It may be necessary. It may be necessary. It may be necessary. What's your take on this, folks? Is this a situation that the vice president and the governor should talk about? Is she right in rejecting the invitation from the governor? Or should she just kind of say what she said? It is what it is. I said what I said and keep it moving. All right, folks, let me hear what you got to say on this. Mimi, Pretty Brown, Mimi 726, you said no, Vice President Harris should not entertain DeSantis' disrespectful invitation. The audacity of it all. The audacity of it all. Okay. I hear you, Mimi. I hear you, sis. You are not a victim. You checked in and said, mountain out of a molehill. She came down to virtue signal. That's all. Virtue signal. I haven't heard that term before. You are not a victim. You have to explain that one to me. So just put it back in the chat. You just explain it to me, because I just never heard that term. So let me know when I'm missing here. But I hear you that you saying that it's a big deal. There's no big deal about this. Okay. No big deal. Cindy, my sister Cindy D, you said DeSatan, talking about Ron DeSantis. DeSatan has some damage control to do. Black sister Vice President Harris made him look bad. It's kind of too late to have that conversation. She should have been called before he made the changes. It's marketing. Well, I'm going to push back on that in just a little bit, Cindy. He doesn't have to tell her that he's making changes to his state history curriculum. He doesn't need permission. He's the governor of the state. That is a state issue, not a federal issue, not a national issue. That's a state issue. So what we're seeing really, this is a culture war. He has the right to do it, quote unquote, because it's the Florida Department of Education. He's the governor. but it's a culture war. So he doesn't need permission to say, hey, can I make some changes to the curriculum? I mean, he doesn't. But I see what your point is. I definitely see what your point is. Pauline, you checked in. Thank you, Cindy. You said, I think she should go. Maybe she can talk some sense in his head, give him a history lesson. I think she should go. I agree that she should go. Is she the right one to give a history lesson? I don't think that that's the case for her. I don't think she should be the one to do it. I think there needs to be very, what can I say on this? There's so many scholars, folks, that can speak to this. There needs to be some serious conversation about this. Serious conversation. Ariel Willio, you said, nope, there's no need for a fruitless conversation. DeSantis has already shown who he is. Here's the thing, though. Is this about him as an individual, as a personality, as one person? Or are we talking about the fight for our children? See, that's the thing that I'm trying to keep in mind. I hear the fact that it's Ron DeSantis. No, we don't want to give him. But guess what? We're talking about a curriculum that's going to affect the children. So should we not, quote unquote, put up a fight for the children? Because it's one thing to say, oh, yes, oh, no, we don't want to, quote unquote, entertain an individual like a Ron DeSantis. That's one thing. But we're talking about Governor Ron DeSantis, a man who has power and influence, a man who can dictate the agenda for thousands of Black children, brown children, white children, Asian American children. It's about the children. So what kind of fight do we put up for the children? All right, just something to throw out there as we have this discussion. Tiffany Williams, thank you so much for checking in. You said, hell no, we have got to stop arguing with these people at a point. I hear you. I hear you. But again, I'm going back to my point. What about the children? Who's fighting for the children? Is this about politics? Quote unquote, yes, obviously. But at the end of the day, children are going to be exposed. Now, if this is going to come off as like some circus act, like Harris versus DeSantis, look, Vice President Harris has people on her team that she can send down there, right, to have these conversations. Look, we have had bigger discussions where the president was involved. And I'm not talking about President Biden. I'm talking about just in general. If you think about all of the riffraff that goes on in Congress, how the president and congressional leaders are at odds with one another, some point they go into a room and they hash it out, right? It's just that this is a public situation, right? This is a part of the culture war that we are all embroiled in at this point. But I can't help but to think like somebody's got to say something. It can't just be a speech. I'm gonna drop a bomb here and then boom, that's it. Now, maybe part of the issue is that like the Harris team has said, look, we don't want to quote unquote lower our standards to entertain a guy like this, especially as it gets so close to the election for next year and all of those things. But something should be said. I mean, yeah, they said what he said, but if he's saying, look, I will talk to you, we'll host you. It's like somebody saying, I'm gonna host you at the, you wanna fight? Let's fight, let's go. Let's go. Do you walk away? Do you walk away? Especially if they kind of hit you and say, oh, you just did a little last minute trip down to Florida. You said what you said and then you dipped out. You didn't even talk to me while you were down here. I don't know. Let's go back to what you did. All right, let me go. We got a poll running right now, folks, on our YouTube channel under Roland Martin. Should Vice President Harris accept Governor DeSantis' invitation? She said she wasn't going to go, right? But I think there should be some reconsideration. I'm not going to hold y'all on that. I think there needs to be some reconsideration. Francesca Epps, you checked in and said, yes, it is about him because no matter what she says or what it's going to say, he is not going to change his mind. Okay, I hear you. I hear you. McCall, I appreciate you, Francesca, for pointing this out. Francesca, you also say, shouldn't the Department of Education step in? Exactly. Exactly. If the Harris team says, look, we can have the conversation, but we'll have the conversation with the Department of Education. We'll have the conversation with our scholars, not these two individuals, but with our scholarship. That's a different conversation. I'm glad you brought that point up, Francesca. Nicole, you said absolutely not. Vice President Harris should not accept the invitation. He, the governor of Florida, will try to challenge her intelligence. Well, if she's on the side of history, if she's right, look, I don't mind somebody challenging my intelligence if I believe that I'm doing the right thing, if I'm saying the right thing, if what I believe is rooted in history is rooted in truth. I don't care about, truth stands on its own, folks. It is what it is. We know what's been happening. So the momentum is actually for her. But if it's about, oh, well, we don't want to lower ourselves, or we don't want him to, to challenge her intelligence, like maybe he does need to be challenged. Here's part of the reason. I got to take another pause. Part of the thing is, see, this is why Republicans, they have a different playbook. They just want to come out and hit you in the mouth. And then Democrats, sometimes I just want us to have be on the same page as some of these Republicans and be like, oh, you want to go for blow? I can go for blow. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know we always go back to what Madam First Lady Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. I get all that. Trust me, I do. Sometimes I want you to hurt them. I just want somebody to hit them in the mouth. I mean, you got to hit people in the mouth, man, sometimes just to get your point across. Look, I'm not advocating violence, obviously, but the point is, if somebody is calling you out, you got to go get a little tussle going on. Get a little tussle, because they're not operating from the same space that you're operating. They're not thinking from the same space. You know what I mean? And guess what? The American people want to see if you're willing to fight for what you say you believe in. Look, I got to take a quick pause. Stay with me, folks. On the other side, we can continue the conversation as we talk about this latest development in this case of what's going down in Florida, as Governor Ron DeSantis has officially invited Vice President Harris to have a sit-down meeting to talk about the Black History Standards. And right now, as we speak right now, Vice President Harris has declined the invitation, but I'm still asking, should she go? Join us in the conversation, post your comments, and of course, join us in the poll that we got running on YouTube, and stay with us. You're tuned into The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about, for our big culture convo today, we've been talking about Governor Ron DeSantis officially inviting Vice President Kamala Harris to a sit down, to a meeting of some sort about Black history standards, since Vice President Harris said some very, very strong words against the standards that the Florida Department of Education and Governor Ron DeSantis is implementing, and talking about and rewriting the narrative about slavery, about those who were enslaved, our people who were enslaved, right? And so the governor invited the Vice President Harris yesterday to a meeting. Vice President Harris responded today saying that she will not entertain the governor. She said in her words, she made the point that she would not, there's no round table, no lecture, no invitation we will accept to debate an undeniable fact. There was no redeeming qualities of slavery. Okay, I get that point. But why? I'm gonna be honest with y'all, folks. Crew, I'm going to be honest. I think that the vice president should not automatically shut this down. I think that the vice president, if we want to talk about having a breaking this culture that we have in society right now, where if you don't agree with somebody, you don't talk to them at all. And this could be a teaching moment. It doesn't have to be a razzle dazzle like a Mike Tyson, or, you know what I'm saying, like a fight, like, oh, Harris versus DeSantis type of situation. But I think there needs to be something that needs to be said, because again, this is not about one man. This is about an idea that is going to be taught to thousands of children. So to me, it's like, well, even though you may not want to sit down with a person that disagrees with you, that's fine. But the fact is that Ron DeSantis is a man of power, is a man of influence, and he can dictate the agenda. Who's fighting for the children? Who's fighting to make sure that there are some different voices at the table? If it's not Vice President Harris sitting directly down with Ron DeSantis, I'm sure the vice president has people in her camp that can reach out to Black scholars and other folks, like we got Dr. Carr and many others, who could talk about these things. Can you imagine that? Like, okay, we're going to get some of our most brilliant scholars to go down to Florida and having a conversation with some of the officials from the Department of Education, Florida Department of Education, and having a different conversation about this thing. But I feel like this is becoming something more personal rather than something that's rooted in beyond the personality. Let me go back to what you got to say. So many of you are checking in on this, and I appreciate y'all, crew, for doing so. You are not a victim. You say, why not go down and have a civil conversation on the issue? People are scared to have conversations with people who disagree with them. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Why not? Why not? You say, well, he might say something crazy. You already know that. But this ain't a fight about him. He's graduated from Harvard. He already has a history degree. He already is. I'm talking about these babies, man. If we don't put up a fight for the babies, and I think we can all, I think for a lot of folks, we know that this is crazy. This is ass backwards, however you want to say it. But you got to put up a fight for the babies at all costs. We're talking about the minds of Black children. Now, y'all know my criticism of the vice president's remarks when we shared with you her remarks. She didn't use the term Black. She didn't emphasize that this is going into the minds of Black children. So if they get this distorted view of their ancestors through this history, the way that the Florida Department of Education and Ron DeSantis wants to present it, and there's no real effort to constantly jam it up, then what? Because he's going to do what he wants to do anyway. But the point is, what do? We just sit there to the sideline? Oh, the vice president said some remarks. She said some strong words about it. Therefore, it's done. No, it's not done. You keep going at it until you make some headway, but you keep blazing the path along. We don't just give up. Well, I don't want to sit down. Look, you know how many times that the president of the United States sat down with quote unquote terrorists or from around the country, from around the world? We don't negotiate. You know, I know the policy, we don't negotiate with terrorists and all of that stuff. But do you know how many times that has happened in the history of America? That the enemy, the person that America deems to be an enemy of America sat down with certain people? Come on. I don't care about no personality. I'm looking at the principle and I'm looking at the ultimate problem. I don't want Black children to be infected with poison about their history. AP, you checked in. You said he is not on her level. I believe that the White House should send someone to meet with him from the White House. That is considered a step down from the vice president. He is not on her level. Okay, then send somebody, but don't act like we gotta fight, man. We gotta fight this off. AP, I appreciate you. Danny Batter, my guy, you checked in and said sometimes when you're silent may look like you're in agreement. Speak up and fight against wrong, especially when it comes to the minds of our children. Facts. This doesn't have to be a personality thing. It's about the children. If it's left here in this current space that it's in, the children are still going to be affected by the situation. All right, let me go back to what you got to say on this, folks. And let me just share this with you. Andre Cross, you said, absolutely. Take a tribe of scholars with her, have a real conversation. Honestly, it should be more of a master class than a debate. Right. Why not? The Democrats get busted in the mouth all the time. And look, here's the thing, man. Nothing gives you, at least from the optics of it, it looks like you're not running away from a fight, which the Democrats have been challenged by, right? People said that the Republicans are constantly on the offense and the Democrats are on the defense. Man, go down there and whip some ass, man. Scholarly, in a scholarly way. But go down there and whip it. And you don't have to send the vice president. Okay, I get it. All right, you're vice president to the governor, right? But, what's this, the month of August? School starts in the next couple of weeks. Man, go down there with the power that you and the truth and bring it down there. And then even if it doesn't work out, nobody can say they ain't put up a fight. Oh man, it didn't work out. Well, at least she went down there and she put up a fight. But when you don't want to, come on. Gerald, you checked in and said, okay, I agree. As long as she has Dr. Claude Anderson, Dr. Greg Carr, and Roland Martin. Look, man, y'all know Big Brother Roland. He would chomp at the bit. But you got all these scholars. You got to use what you have. You got folks in the arsenal. If you're not strong in it, Madam Vice President, if you're not strong in the history side, and that's okay, because we're not expecting you to know it all and be it all. Bring some people down there. Have a discussion. Because guess what's going to happen? If this happens in another state, right? If this happens in another state where they start pushing back, then what? So you got to cut off the snake right at the head. Because if it keeps spreading, if they say, oh, well, Florida can do it, and the vice president gave some fiery words, but nothing really of substance came from it. And as a result of that, okay, well, we can do it. Well, yeah, we might get a little pushback, but nobody's going to do nothing from the White House. Suppose that this same type of disease and starts to spread to other states. Then what? Then we're going to all look silly. Oh, man, we should have said something to him. Oh man, you got to show a force, and like you bring your army down there, because he's not afraid. He feels very confident about his stance. He's going to move the way he's going to move. Sometimes you just got to accept the invitation. Like, all right, well, we'll come down there. We're gonna come down there and trust me and believe the United States of America. When the United States of America comes, come on, man. Y'all, this country show more force for less. McCall, the people of Florida would have to fight through voting, through activism, through organizing. I mean, that's all true. McCall, you and I both know it. That is absolutely true. But it can't be a weak stance. That's the problem. I think many of us are saying, damn, is this going to be a weak stance? Because then what's going to happen? See, if a lie is left unaddressed, here's the principle of the matter, folks. If the lie is left unaddressed, right, and we are silent, I mean, yeah, I mean, people heard what the vice president said, and they may agree. But guess what? The lie is still alive and well. So that first attempt, it didn't stop anything. Okay. Now he's talking about we'll come on down, we'll host you. Okay. Maybe not have it in Tallahassee, maybe have it somewhere else. I don't know. But there's got to be a discussion, because we don't want this to be the culture where we are showing that we're not willing to go all out for the minds of the babies. Low Dust, you said, I'm with you on this, Farajii. We need to stand and fight with the people who are being affected by his policies. Come on. Absolutely. Absolutely. Meditation. Thank you, Low Dust. I appreciate that. Meditation, riding waves. You said we had free rent, free full-time employment, and no divorces, which means fathers in the home. So we did benefit. I don't know who the hell thinks that. I mean, I think we show the world that we're not a weak people. I think that's one of the, if we want to quote unquote call it a benefit, we showed the world the resilience of Black people, of African people, right? See, we as African people, we don't, oh no. We don't bow down. We don't go weak, man. We don't, no, man, no. See what I'm saying? See, this is for the babies, man. This is for the babies. And I want us to, and I'm driving this point home because somebody is watching how this whole situation unfolds. And if we don't fight, man, look, I think about Dr. King. Dr. King went to the fight. He went to the thick of it, right? He put his life on the line. He ain't just talk pretty words. He was a great orator. You and I both know that. It's a great orator, but he put himself right in the middle of it. And he faced the enemy. He faced the enemy with a fearlessness that allowed him to inspire people. And even though he might have gotten his head knocked a couple of times, even though people got hurt and some of our people died, there was another generation that came right behind him that was so inspired that they said, no, buddy, we're not taking that no more. Somewhere along the line, somebody got to stand up, right? And say, truth is truth, a lie is a lie. And you got to challenge the lie. Everywhere that motherfucker show up, you got to challenge the lie. That's how hard that we got to go nowadays. You challenge the lie. You don't let people just lie to your children, or you just walk away and you say, okay, it's going to take care of itself. No, we don't have that time. Our children and our people's minds are at stake here. So you fight them. If you want to fight, then we bring you a fight, damn it. But you don't back down. Because with this, the whole country is looking at the situation. We don't back down. We said what we said. If you want to bring the fight, then we got fire for that ass. It's just that simple. Lana, you said I wouldn't accept. Biden needs to accept. Who is Kamala, who made her the voice for Black folks? No disrespect, but that challenge is for pomp and circumstance, and Democrats falling for it. I mean, she didn't accept it. But we're making a point, man. Look, I don't care who accepts it. Somebody's got to say something beyond what's already been said. Let me see something here. Let me see who else we got here. I'm just just give me a minute. I'm just getting myself together. I'm tired of the weakness, man. I'm tired of the weakness. I know we got to take a quick pause, and I got my next guest coming in here. She's actually an educator herself to talk about etymology talk about the power of it and literacy, but we can't go weak no more. I'm tired of this. We can't go weak no more. Either you let some people have it. Republicans, they're just, I mean, in some of these cases, and of course not all, but a lot of these Republicans, man, they come in, they're not dealing with the same playbook. They're not working by the same rules. And look, at the same time, and I would say this even for the Democrats, like, yo, stop being weak, man. Stop being weak. The American people, black folks in this country, we've been ostracized, marginalized, disenfranchised for too damn long. Stop being weak on black people, man. We can't deal with this. And then you want us to vote for y'all on election day and say, we stood up. No, you ain't stand up for shit. Stop being weak, man. We can't do this no more. Enough is enough, man. Either you talk and you put your money where that mouth is. Again, you may not be the vice president, but somebody's got to say, hey, enough is enough. And we'll go down there, a bunch of black scholars, and say, all right, well, fine. Tell DeSantis we got it. We'll take it. If the White House gives to say, okay, well, we'll send some folks, black scholars go down there and start whipping some ass down there. And show the Florida Department of Education that you are not going to put the poison in the minds of black children no more. Enough is enough. We got to take a quick pause. When we come back, conversation about etymology, literacy, and more. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Man, oh man, this is a great conversation talking about Black history. And this is something that my sister, my very special guest, and I have to apologize to my guest, Brittany Sala, Brittany Saylor Lee Bay, who is the creator of etymologyrules.com. She also has a brand new YouTube show teaching young people about the origin of words, and more importantly, how it can be used to advance literacy. She is a reading specialist. She's an author and educational expert. So I'm going to bring Sister Brittany into the conversation. Sister Brittany, I apologize. Let's bring her into the frame. I apologize because I know this is on your time that we brought you on, but what can I say, sister? That's just how the spirit goes. But I certainly want to, I don't want to shortchange you for the time that we promised you. So I apologize for that.
No problem.
But I'm passionate about this. You're passionate about this. What do you make of this? What do you make of where we are in terms of understanding? You've been in education for years. You're teaching young people about the power of literacy, using etymology, and folks definitely check out her website at etymologyrules.com. But talk to us, Brittany. What do you see right now as we're having these conversations about education and Black people?
So I've been teaching for about 16 years now, and in particular, I'm a reading specialist, so I work with students who are a couple years or more below reading level, as well as build out reading programs in the educational settings that I'm in. And one of the number one things that I'm noticing is that our misteaching of literacy negatively impacts Black children significantly more than any other group of children. And so this becomes a major issue for me because we actually have been, in this country, we've been teaching literacy incorrectly for at least the past 20 years. The schools most schools have not been teaching phonics, and phonics is the skill of being able to, or understanding that words are made up of sounds, and these sounds are represented by letters. And the way that the letters combine let us know what sound those individual letters make. So we know A makes that long A sound, maybe if there's an I or Y after it. But we know if it's closed with two consonants next to each other, on the front and end of the word, then it's going to be that short A. So that's just one example of several phonics rules that children need to learn. And because it hasn't been being taught in our schools, our children, particularly white children, with resources, wealthy white children or even middle-class white children, are able to hire help outside of the school. So one thing I also do is tutor. And if their students are getting something in the school, there are resources outside of the school. However, our students do not necessarily have the same benefit. And so our families are heavily reliant on what's happening in schools, and misteaching of literacy has led to disproportionately low rates of literacy within our community. So, that's what I'm seeing day to day, that is our students are suffering because as a whole, our education system is severely flawed.
Severely flawed is the understatement, Brittany. Severely flawed. Black children are leaving school functionally illiterate in states across the country, right? So many times we've had conversations about education, especially on this show, and folks say the parents need to do more at home. What's your take on that idea? Is home, quote unquote, that level of focus at home? How much does that make a difference when you're talking about literacy and talking about young people really becoming prepared for the world outside of their home?
It makes a huge difference.
And is that realistic? Let me ask you a question. How realistic? Because parents working, you got generations in the household now, grandma, uncle, and all different types of folks. Time to give. And I know this sounds good on paper, like all you got to do is just sit down with your children. But parents are stressed. Parents are working a lot of hours. You know what I'm saying? And so there are a lot of things happening. But so I would love to get your take on that.
Well, there are a couple of things in play here. Firstly, to answer your first question, yes, time outside of school in general is very important for students to build their literacy skills, because that's where they get practice. And we really want them to have authentic practice as well. So, we give them assignments, we give them texts that we want them to read while we're in school, but to build independent readers, children need to be exposed to text based on what they're interested in. So, that means going to the library and picking out books and going home and reading the books and then being asked questions about said books. So that is best practice. Now, to answer your follow-up question, I definitely recognize that it's unrealistic to expect everybody to be able to do these things at the same degree in their homes. Everybody has various challenging schedules and various demands. And so this is where, to me, community comes into play. As I said before, there are communities where parents have the resources, they have the time. The communities where the parents are not as, the time is not as available, this is where programming within the community. So there are plenty of, I'm in DC, there are plenty of community centers in DC. Actually, we have a lot of charter schools in DC, and that's a whole nother conversation. But there are programs that the schools offer after school as well. And oftentimes those programs are not coming from the school itself, but from partners in the community who are coming in to offer extracurricular and supplemental services. So, in those situations where time is a challenge for the family, I would encourage them to lean on or utilize the programming that is available. Particularly, I think in a lot of cities, a lot of urban areas, it tends to be a lot more programming than when you're in more rural areas. And so take advantage of what's there. The other part of it is I can't put everything on the parents, because I believe that parents send their children to school to learn, right? And so it becomes our responsibility as educators to provide accurate instruction. That's what we are supposed to do. When it comes to reinforcement, as I said, those are things that happen outside of the school, and the community needs to take a role in helping to reinforce and helping students to find time for practice. But when it comes to laying down the foundations and the fundamentals, I mean, if it's not our job as educators, then what are we doing? What is our job at all? So I believe it's a shared effort, and I think that it's problematic that instead of us coming together and discussing how we can create spaces for children to build their literacy skills, it's a lot of blaming. I hear teachers say, well, this is happening at home, and the parent needs to do this. And then, I hear parents say, well, the school needs to do this. And it's not enough conversations and hearing each other out so that we can be solution oriented to some of these problems that we're facing.
And I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that. And talk to us about the work that you're doing with the use of etymology, because for some of our people and for some of our listeners, they may not be familiar with the term. So talk to us about that.
So etymology is the study of the origin of words. So understanding things like, I love this example, but the word disaster, it's of Greek origin, and it has the root word aster, which means star, and the prefix dis, which means not. Understanding like words in English in particular, since that is what we teach our children to read in. Words in English primarily come from Greek, Latin, and Germanic, and understanding not only where these words come from, but their morphemes. So a morpheme is a word part. So you may be familiar with the terms like prefix, root, suffix. That all is a part of etymology. And by learning these things, children can build their word reading skills, their decoding skills, so their ability to sound out words, even their vocabulary skills. If you know that the root word graph, G-R-A-P-H, means to write or to draw, when you come across a word that has that root word, it's a little clue as to the meaning of that word if you didn't already know what it meant. So that's what etymology is, and that is a major reason as to why it's important. It just helps young people and older people to build their literacy skills and improve their comprehension.
So this is something that smaller children can, this is a concept that smaller children can grasp onto. And then, of course, they can take it with them as they grow in their literacy, they grow in their years. So is that what I'm hearing from you, Brittany?
Absolutely. I think some teachers think that students should not start learning about morphology. Again, that's the study of word parts, prefix, roots, suffixes. Some teachers don't really introduce that to students until they're in like the upper elementary grades, but we could start as young as kindergarten. The prefix "un" is one that a lot of children have encountered. So if you say I'm unhappy, that is a morpheme, that is a prefix. And students knowing UN says "un" helps them decode words, and it helps them know that when I see "un" in a word that has a base, I know that that "un" means not. My show, it's the etymology rule shows with Miss B and Ori. I'm Miss B. It's an animated show, but I'm the voice of Miss B, and my 5-year-old goddaughter is the voice of Ori, my sidekick. And every other week, our episodes feature new vocabulary, but also we teach prefixes. We have a root word tree where recently the children learn the prefix miss, M-I-S. They learn that means wrong. So if you misspell something, if you misunderstand something, if you make a mistake, seeing that miss and knowing that it means wrong or incorrect helps children to unlock vocabulary terms. So yes, it could be introduced to children as young as kindergarten for sure.
And with the other piece of it, you know, because of our culture with Black language, some folks call it Ebonics, some folks call it slang. How does etymology work in that space? How does that give children a better understanding? And we got to throw in there that, you know, there's a term text talk. You know what I mean? Where the way we text has now affected how we speak and how we understand things in terms of spelling of words and understanding the root of words. Can you speak to that?
Sure. And I will say, I don't think that we do enough with Black language in schools in general. So I'll start there. And I think that acknowledging that Black language is just as valid of a language as what some may call standard English, you know, recognizing that language, we use language for a purpose. And so we may speak one way in one setting and we speak another way in another setting. And that does not mean that one way is better than the other. And I like to reiterate that because a lot of teachers might say that our children, when they speak Black language, when they speak Ebonics, they are speaking bad or improper English. But the reality is children learn to code switch at a very early age. It's not just from a space of Black language versus standard English. I mean, even the way that children speak to adults versus how they speak to one another is a form of code switching. So I like to start there. From there, I think it would be really important and fascinating if children actually learned where some of the language that they hear in their homes or where Black language originated from. So certain ways that we use words, if they understood where that came from, I believe that adds an element of validity to that language. And so I think when their own language is celebrated, when they are able to embrace their own language and when they understand their own language, I think it improves their understanding of other languages. So understanding Black English, validating Black English will help students to understand and be able to read better in your standard English. And we see that actually with ELL or ESL students. So when students so I have Spanish speakers. I have some Spanish speakers who speak Spanish fluently but cannot read in their own language. But then when they're able to learn to read in their own language, when they're able to better understand the depths of their own language, it really aids them in being able to understand English.
Absolutely. My sister Tia Z, you said 100, sis. One of the reasons why I was reading at 3rd grade level and 1st grade is because I was taught prefixes and suffixes by my aunt in kindergarten. Absolutely. You know, Brittany, this is all very, very empowering to hear that you're taking this approach. And I invite everybody to check out your website, etymologyrules.com. Also check out your YouTube show, your new YouTube show, which is teaching young people and children how to break the words down, looking at the root of the word, and most importantly, comprehending these words and their meaning. You're doing phenomenal work, and I truly, truly appreciate you. Again, I apologize for giving such short time. Sometimes the passion comes out that way, but I'm glad that we at least had some discussion about the great work that you're doing. What's the website? Give all the information very quickly as we close out.
So my website is etymologyrules.com. I'm on all social media platforms at Etymology Rules. And then you can find the Etymology Rules show on the ATP Kids Network on YouTube. That's ATP Kids Network. So
there it is right there. Sister Brittany, I truly, truly appreciate you. Brittany Selah Lee Bay, we thank you so much. And more importantly, Sister Brittany, thank you for being so good for the culture.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. We have been, our time has been very well spent. Big shout out to all of you, some of the new Culture Crew members that joined the discussion today. So I appreciate you. Big shout out to my OG Legacy Culture Crew members. I truly, truly appreciate you. There we go. Also, big shout out to our special guest, Brittany Selah Lee Bay, and also my sister Noemi Perez. Thank you so much, sisters, for joining us in a conversation. Folks, if you enjoyed the discussion as much as we did, make sure you support Black Star Network. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. We would love to get your support. More importantly, we want you to download the app for free, put it on all of your devices, and of course, follow us on social media. But stay tuned, stay notified about when we are having these important conversations like the ones that we had today and so many others. So go check out our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, stay tuned. Up next at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is Roland Martin Unfiltered. I thank my team, King Keenan, and I thank Maddie, I thank Joel, I thank Shannon. And again, I thank you for tuning in. A lot of passion, a lot to talk about, but this is all a part of one thing, the culture. All right, folks, as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.
You're rocking with the best.